Hi, welcome to a Photoshop tutorial series based on Classroom in a Book on the Adobe Creative Suite 2. In this tutorial, we are going to use and play with some of the tools in the Photoshop toolbox, look at setting some options, zooming in and out, arranging palettes, undoing and redoing actions, and in general, I'd like to give you a quick overview of the work area in Photoshop. The picture you found or see in front of you is found on the U drive in the Adobe CIB folder in Photoshop Lessons, Lesson 1, Project 1. While you're working on opening that, I'm going to talk to you really quickly about some of the areas on this main toolbar. In the top area, you have the marquee or masking tools. You have some selection tools, lasso or a magic wand tool. You have a crop tool which cuts through all layers at once. You have a slice tool which breaks your pictures into pieces. You have in this next area the actual retouching tools for Photoshop. The next area here you have the vector graphics tools, text, selections, pen, shapes. Here you have manipulating or moving your photo on screen without actually doing anything to it, selecting colors, making notes, move it around, pan, zoom in and out, setting foreground, background colors or positioning, standard and quick mask mode, and other stuff on the bottom here. Okay, let's get started. So we've already opened this file. And you'll notice that I don't work with Adobe Bridge. I've just been using straight up open. In order to zoom or manipulate, sometimes it's nice to see areas closer in. You have a couple options. There's a zoom tool here, and you can click on the zoom tool and zoom in. And the other thing you need to notice is that as you're using tools, there's a tool bar or a sub bar that fits up on top of here, an options bar I think is what the book calls it. So I can magnify or zoom out. Now there's another way of using the zoom tool. You can hit Z on the keyboard, which is a shortcut, and literally draw a box around what you want to zoom in on. And then you can use Control 0 to zoom back to normal view. You can use Control, so that's Control 0. And then you have Control plus, which zooms in, Control minus, which zooms out. And then you have a navigator and a palette, and that's what these things over on the side are called, palettes. You would find window, navigator, and as you move the slider, it zooms in or out, and you can pull that view area around on the picture, just kind of panning on the picture. So that's a little bit about zooming in and out, and that's on page 17. As we turn to page 18 in the book, it's going to ask us to select an area of the picture so that we can work with this young gentleman's face. So if I was to hit Z on the keyboard, I could kind of zoom in on this area because it's easier to see him. And then I'm going to be looking for the ellipse tool. And if I turn my toolbar to look like yours, a standard default, the ellipse tool sits in underneath the rectangular marquee tool. And if you notice, there's a little black arrow in the bottom right-hand corner of the box. That indicates that there are more buttons or more functions in underneath. If you press and hold, you can mouse over and pick those particular things. The last tool used is always on the top of the stack. And then I want to show you really quickly here a couple of ways of using this tool. So you can actually start maybe up to the left and click and drag and pull this thing in. If you don't like the selection, you can always go for a new selection. Select, undo, deselect, try again. Repeat it as often as necessary until you get what you want. That's kind of awkward and does take a long time. So there's a better way of doing it. Click and drag in your selection. If you hold the space bar and you look at my thumb there, push down on the space bar, you can toggle it and you can slide this tool around as long as you don't release the mouse button. So I can reposition until I'm happy. Then I let go of the mouse and I let go of the space bar. The other thing I'd like you to notice here with this selection tool is that on this options bar there's a tool that I'm using, the selection tool, and I have the option of adding to the selection, taking away from the selection, or intersecting. I'm going to add to the selection, and I'm going to mouse over and I'm going to pick up, pan over, and I'm going to pick up this young lady. This time, instead of dragging it from the left and pulling it in, I'm going to click roughly on the center of her face. I'm going to pull out and I'm going to hold the Alt. And what the holding the Alt key does is it expands the circle off the center of the selection. And then I can reposition here a little bit with the space bar until I'm happy. Let go of the mouse, let go of the keys. And now I have two selections. If I zoom out here, I have the young gentleman selected and I have the young lady selected. That brings me through page 20 into page 21, where I am going to, in a minute, go select inverse. Right now, this selection that we're working with, if we made changes, and I can show you that here, we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Levels. And we're just going to pull this in a little bit so we can get a little nicer focus here that resets some of the light and dark points on their face and maybe just brighten it up a little bit. So I'm going to pull up the output levels a little bit and go okay. So we've just spent a little time working with the two people here and brightening them up a little bit inside the selection. Now if we go select inverse, it will work with all of the photo but these two people. And instead of using the levels function, we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Curves. Now the curves thing is kind of like the levels function that we just looked at. It talks about or shows input and output levels, and you can see I'm changing. Give me a black and make it into a white. Give me a white, make it into a black. And you can see how that works. But the other thing that the curve does is it allows you to play with some of the colors in between. So you can manipulate this curve thing and you get all sorts of strange colors out of it if you like. And if you don't like some of these things, you can pull those adjustments or midpoints back out. So I'd suggest you play with it a little bit. What we want to try to do is darken the outside a little bit, but not too much. So let's darken the surrounding area a little bit. Maybe we can just do this so that those other people are a little bit dark. When you're happy with what you've got, you can click OK. When you're done working with your selection, you can go select, deselect. Now before you actually do that, or if you did it already, I'd like to point out there's a bottom spot here. Anytime you actually make a selection using this, you always have the option of saving it so that you can use it later on. So if you make a special selection of sorts, a special shape that you want to reuse later on, you can always save your selection and then reload it. thank you for watching lesson number 1. I think that's about all I want to talk about in this lesson. There's some things about type and other stuff later on, but I don't think they're all that important, and we'll hit them in further lessons. Look forward to looking at lesson number 3 with you in a bit. Have a nice day.